The Atlanta Braves get Ronald Acuña Jr. back. He does Ronald Acuña Jr. things. And they lose 2 out of 3 to the San Diego Padres. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Monday, May 26th. Happy Memorial Day to everybody watching. This is your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on X Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. And I need your help here. We are just a few subscribers away from 1,000 subscribers, free subscribers, to Braves Today, to the newsletter. Again, bravestoday.com. Once we hit 1,000, I'm going to give away this Ronald Acuña Jr. MVP bobblehead to a subscriber to the newsletter. So, again, bravestoday.com. We are just a couple subs away from 1,000, and for some reason, that number just feels like it's something I need to do. If you're watching this for the first time, if you're on audio, if you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, subscribe to the Braves Today YouTube channel, hit the notification bell, leave a comment down below, help share the video actually, the algorithm picks that up. If you're listening on audio, please leave a 5-star review, Apple, Spotify, YouTube Music, all that good stuff, and tell a friend about both Braves Today as a podcast and a newsletter. All right, I want to get into some of the roster moves made over the weekend, Orlando Arcia being gone, and how the Braves configure things now and all the ramifications of that. But first, we need to talk about this weekend series. There's a lot to get to. Whether it was what the offense did, whether it was Ronald's return and how good he looked. So let's start off there. Ronald Acuña Jr. homered on the very first pitch that he saw on Friday night. And it's funny for a couple reasons. One, he knew this was going to happen. Okay? He told the media after the game, and the quote came from the AJC's Justin Toscano. Ronald told his brothers that he was going to homer on the first pitch of the game. He knew it. You couldn't have written the script any better. He had a second hit. He had an outfield assist in that first game. He hit another home run on Saturday. He had another hit, a double on Sunday. He finished the series 4 for 12 with 2 runs, both of those on home runs, 3 total RBI, 1 walk to 6 strikeouts. So again, he did strike out 6 times. He's not 100% back on the timing against major leaguers, okay? He also had a couple opportunities to steal and did not attempt to run. I don't think he's going to stop running completely, but I do think this kind of goes back to something we talked about during his rehab, where he is going to be more selective, picking and choosing his moments. And I think the big question is going to be, what value? I'm not saying it's not worth having Ronald Acuña Jr. He makes every single lineup better. How does the calculus change if he is somebody that can go first to third on a base hit, but isn't necessarily going to be as eager to get on first and then steal second and then score on a base hit? How does that change the approach for Atlanta's offense? I think that kind of remains to be seen, because one of the main reasons with Ronald Acuña Jr. why you don't want to walk him to get to the guys that are behind him is, especially that 2023 season, if you walked him, he was just going to steal second and put himself in scoring position anyway. You might as well pitch to him. Now, granted, oftentimes that didn't work out, right? He's going to hit a home run. He's going to lace a double in the corner or whatever. But when you have a 2, 3, and 4, Matt Olson's leading baseball in home runs, setting a franchise record for homers in a single season, when you have Marcell Ozuna raking behind him, when you have Austin Riley hitting well, there's no point in you have to pitch to Ronald Acuña Jr. This version of the roster, right? This version of the Braves offense, if Ronald's not going to be running as much, there's virtually no reason not to pitch to him. I'm sorry, back up. There's virtually no reason not to just don't pitch to him, throw him nothing, and walk him. He'll be on first base. Right now, you're not necessarily scared about trying to get the number 2 hitter out. You're not scared about trying to get Austin Riley out. We're going to talk about that defensive stuff, by the way, in Snit's comments later. You're not too scared about trying to get Matt Olson out, or even at times Marcell Ozuna. So I wonder how long this not running a lot thing is going to persist with Ronald before he starts maybe not getting back to 2023 levels of aggressiveness, but running a little bit more. We also saw Ronald with an outfield assist. On Monday, we saw another a over 100 mile an hour throw. I think it was on Sunday. What's really funny and frustrating and disappointing now is Ronald Acuña Jr. has 0.4 WAR after 3 games. His WAR on the season per Fangraphs is already more than every single outfielder of the Atlanta Braves, with the exception of Eli White. He's already outproduced Michael Harris. He's already outproduced Alex Verdugo, and he's played 3 games. If that kind of shows you the frustration that Atlanta's been dealing with over this first, third of the season, really? If you look at where you are right now, we're going to get into that whole thing in a minute. You're 52 games in. And so you've played just under 1/3 of the season. And Ronald is your second most valuable outfielder by Fangraphs WAR after 3 games. Obviously some work to do here. But this weekend, on that note, this weekend really showed the flaws that are still inherent with this team. I'm thinking about Friday night. Eli White is in there to pinch run in place of Alex Verdugo. Okay. Sean Murphy swinging bunt on accident, I think, gets White to second base. Ozzie Albies laces a line drive up the middle to Jackson Merrill. White was 2 steps from the third base bag. Tuiasa Sopo's giving him the standard conventional hands up stop sign. And White, for some reason, misinterprets the sign, turns around, runs back to second base, gets thrown out. White kind of said after the game, he just got it wrong, right? Tui did nothing wrong. We have criticized Matt Tuiasa Sopo a lot for some of his sins. He did nothing wrong in this situation. That is the same sign that you always give when you are telling a guy to stop. But it's the little things like that. You look at Sunday in that loss. Austin Riley commits a defensive error. It is like the 5th that he's had in the last couple weeks. It extends the inning, and then Spencer Schwellenbach gives up a home run to Gavin Sheets, which I want to clarify, and I wrote about this over at Braves Today in the newsletter. In the Today's 3 Things from Sunday's game, that was an incredibly improbable home run. We talked about this when Raisel Iglesias gave up some hits, and I was like, the fact that he gave up that hit, you can't blame him for that. That was great pitching and just amazing hitting. Gavin Sheets being a lefty, the right on left slider down and in off the plate. This season, going into Sunday's action, had been thrown 2,581 times. 2 of them had been hit for home runs before Gavin Sheets did it. And Gavin Sheets was both lower and farther in than any of the other 2 that were hit for home runs. Gavin Sheets had seen that exact pitch 27 times this year, and he had not gotten a hit on a single one of them. He had whiffed over 50% of the time on that down and in slider. Like, the collective batting average for the league on that pitch, again, 2,581 of them, was .072 with a 103 slug. So yes, some of the home runs were obviously problems. The Jake Cronenworth, he hung a slider. Schwellenbach hung a slider in the 7th for that home run. Manny Machado, Dylan Lee left the fastball up in the zone and it got rocked. That Gavin Sheets home run absolutely was not Spencer Schwellenbach's fault. That was an amazing piece of hitting. But because Austin Riley committed an error that extended the inning, rather than that being no runs allowed in that inning, 2 runs came in to score. And that kind of thing is emblematic of where this Braves team is, of the struggles that this Braves team has had. They have, whether it has been anemic offense, whether it has been self-imposed mistakes at the worst possible time, or just, honestly, a little bit of bad luck. Like, that is the perfect play call to Gavin Sheets. That is like 0-2, you throw him a chase pitch down and in, off of the plate, a pitch that he quite literally, in this season, has never gotten a hit off of. He's seen 207 of them in his career entering Sunday, and had put 7 into play and had 3 base hits off of it. Great call. But the way Atlanta's season has gone, it's a hit. Of course it is. In just a second, let's talk about where this team is on the whole, right? Memorial Day today, this is typically the first time when people actually start paying attention to the standings because you have a large enough sample size for it to be meaningful. Let's look at that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today, Lindsay Crosby. Before we get into the standings and everything, I want to talk about something that came out on Sunday after that game. So Austin Riley committed an error. We talked about that. And Mark Bowman of MLB.com put out a tweet after the post-game press conference. And I'm going to read it to you exactly because I think one of the issues here is we're not really quoting people on some of these notes. Quote, Snitker made it clear he wasn't happy with the Braves grounds crew. When asked about Riley's recent errors, he said, quote, I don't think it's all on him if you want to know the truth, end quote. And the rest of Mark Bowman's tweet. 4 of the 5 errors Riley has committed going back to May 8th have occurred at Truist Park. So, according to Mark Bowman, Brian Snitker thinks that the grounds crew not taking proper care of the left side of the infield is why Austin Riley has had a stretch of errors recently. I have a couple issues with the framing of this. The first is, if it was the grounds crew, it would be more than just Austin Riley. 14 games for Austin Riley in the month of May. He has 4 errors. Manny Machado of the Padres entered the weekend with the most defensive errors by a third baseman in MLB, right? He had 9 errors going into the weekend. He committed none in 3 games. Jose Tena of the Washington Nationals entered the series against Atlanta with 4 errors in 31 games at third base. He committed 1 in those 4 games. Santiago Espinal, really good defender, no errors on the season. He committed none in 4 games. Max Muncy entered with 7 errors in 47 games. He committed none in 3 games. So if it was a grounds issue, you would think that it would affect everybody playing third base and not just Austin Riley. But the bigger reason that I'm frustrated with this framing and this comment and this tweet from Mark Bowman is that's not what Brian Snitker said. He may have implied that he thinks it's the grounds crew, but he did not say it was the grounds crew. And the framing from Mark Bowman is, quote, Snitker made it clear he wasn't happy with the Braves grounds crew. I'm going to play you the clip of what Snit said and let you decide for yourself if it's clear that he's blaming the grounds crew. So for context, when this starts, this is a screen grab from 680 The Fan. So the visuals, there's no need to see the visuals. Audio people, you're missing absolutely nothing here. It's just a look at the 680 logo. The first voice you hear, I believe, is David O'Brien of The Athletic, who is actually asking the question of Snit. And then Snit answers, and then there's a follow-up that comes after that. Snit elaborates a little more, and then Mark Bowman comes in and takes the conversation somewhere else. Okay, here's the clip of exactly what Brian Snitker said.
over the course of his career. Are you surprised when he makes, kind of, it seems like it's been a rash of errors in a short span?
I don't think it's all him, if you want to know the truth.
You mean making errors? Or?
Yeah, no. I just think he's getting some bad hops and things like that. I don't think it's a bad infielder. I think it's something that I think it's some of the stuff's out of his control, I think.
Just getting back to Ozzy.
So Snit talks about bad hops. Snit talks about some things being out of his control. There's a couple ways to look at this. One of them is the framing that Mark Bowman took, that yes, Snit's blaming the ground screw, right? Because a bad hop could come from an uneven playing surface that causes the ball to bounce unpredictably, right? Like that is a thing that could happen. But to me, when I hear that, it's not clear that Snit's blaming the ground screw. As much as we've talked this year about bad luck versus good luck with batted balls, right? And we talk about batted balls that are hit incredibly hard, but they don't fall for a hit despite an expected batting average of 650 or whatever, right? That is batted ball luck. That is variability in batted ball luck. You can also have that with how the ball reacts to the organic surface of the turf, right? Maybe it takes a funny bounce, an unexpected bounce. Maybe it has some weird, like there's been plays where you can clearly see something unexpected happen. I remember a ground ball to Matt Olson, maybe it was last year, that had so much side spin that it hit the ground in front of Olson and just shot over past him into foul territory. It took a 40-degree turn to the right. Like that is not necessarily the ground screw's fault. That's just the spin of the ball made it do something unexpected. Austin Riley could very well have had some bad luck on some hops over there without it being the fault of the ground, right? It could have been the spin of the ball. It could have been just him misjudging it. There's a lot of different things that could have factored into that. It could have been the sun in his eyes, whatever. But it's a little irresponsible to say that it is clear he's not happy with the ground screw when it absolutely is not clear that he's happy with the ground screw or that he's unhappy with the ground screw. Now, David O'Brien of The Athletic, in his takeaways article that he wrote after the series, he just presented that quote in its entirety. I don't think it's all him, if you want to know the truth. He's getting some bad hops and things like that. I don't think it's a bad infielder. I think some of the stuff is out of his control. And O'Brien wrote, and I'm going to quote here from his article, he didn't cite an issue with the condition of the infield, but sounded as if that's what he meant. So he is also implying that Snit is not happy with the ground screw. But there's nothing on the record that directly says that Snit's not happy with the ground screw. And it's not 100% clear, Bowman implies that it is, that the Braves ground screw is at fault here. What's wild about this whole thing is the senior director of field operations is Ed Mangan. He's the head groundskeeper. His official title is something else. He calls himself, if I remember reading this right, he calls himself like the ground screw chief or something. He's been doing this for 35 years. Like he was the ground screw leader back in Fulton County Stadium. And he's considered to be like a legend in ground screws. He is the guy the NFL uses for the Super Bowl. He spends his springs and summers working on Truist Park. And in the winter, he is in charge of the preparations of the turf that they grow specifically for the Super Bowl. He is one of the best groundskeepers, I would argue, in the world. And so this sucks, right? Like at a certain point, you just need to have a little accountability. And it would have been very easy for Snit to say, listen, he's gotten some bad hops. He's had some bad breaks on some batted balls. But I think Austin would be the first to tell you that he has to be better. He prides himself on his defense. He's done a lot of work to get better. And for whatever reason, recently, that work hasn't been translating every single opportunity on the field. Just say that. You're still not putting the guy on blast. You're acknowledging the struggles a little bit. You're not deflecting. But it was wrong of, I think, Snit to try to deflect blame onto the grounds crew. It was wrong of Mark Bowman to go out there and explicitly say, in essence, that Snit put the grounds crew on blast, because it was not abundantly clear that's what he was talking about. Like I said, it very much sounded to me like he's had some bad luck with some hops, which can happen no matter the condition of the turf. You can have some weird spin and stuff on the balls no matter what. So, frustrating scenario there. Frustrating how that worked out. Now that we're at Memorial Day, let's look at the status of the team as a whole. The record, what we know, what has to change over the last 2/3 of the schedule. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby taking this Memorial Day to actually look at the standings finally. This is really the first time when a lot of baseball people start paying attention to the team's record, okay? Atlanta is now 25-27. They are 8.5 games back in the National League East. They are 6.5 behind the Mets. They are 8.5 behind Philly. And Atlanta's also 4.5 games back in the wild card, okay? So right now, the standings in the National League, Phillies, Cubs, Dodgers are your division leaders, which, okay, yeah, Dodgers, we all thought they'd be there, sure. Mets, Giants, and Padres are your wild card teams right now. Okay? And then the St. Louis Cardinals are right behind the Padres. Like I think it's like a tiebreaker scenario as to why the Cardinals are not in and the Padres are. It's a 29-22 record for the Padres, a 30-23 record for the Cardinals. 4 games back, Arizona Diamondbacks, 26-27. 4.5 games back, Cincinnati Reds, Milwaukee Brewers, Atlanta Braves. And what's really interesting to me is it is very clear, and we've all seen it, it's very clear that this Braves team has underachieved. But they have a positive run differential right now. Like the Brewers, who are technically tied with them in the wildcard standings, are 26-28. They're 2 games below 500. They have a -5 run differential. They've allowed more runs than they've scored. Atlanta, right behind them, has a positive 11 run differential. Atlanta's allowed less runs than the Phillies, than the Cubs, than the Dodgers. Also, every team that's not currently a wild card team ahead of them. They've allowed less runs than the Cardinals. They've allowed less than the Diamondbacks. They've allowed less than the Reds. Allowed less than the Brewers. The 3 wild card teams are much better than anybody else in the National League at preventing runs. The Mets are at 172 for runs allowed. The Giants are at 193. The Padres are at 196. Atlanta's 4th in the National League in run and least number of runs allowed in 205. But Atlanta's also only scored 216. And every team ahead of them in the standings, whether it's in the division or in the wild card, with the exception of the Padres, has also scored more runs than the Braves. The Braves are at 216. The Cubs lead, I think, all of baseball with 321 runs. But A's at 294. The Phillies are at 260. So on and so forth. Diamondbacks 267, right? The Cardinals 254. Atlanta 216. Padres are at 213. They're a plus 17 run differential because they've allowed under 200 runs on the year. And they've scored 213. So from a points allowed, points scored perspective, Atlanta's closest to San Diego. And I think that's where you see how, the fine line that Atlanta is running here. And that's the story. The Pythagorean win-loss. If you just did a win-loss record based on runs scored, Atlanta should be a 27-25 team. Which if they moved to 27-25, they would end up being, I think, 2nd in the wild card behind the Cardinals, who are at 30 wins. So if they had just played to their run differential, they'd be a winning team. But the whole thing with this Braves team is they have just played so many close games. They have 22 one-run games this year. They're 9-13 in those. And it just feels every single game. You look at all of their losses recently. And I'm going back, the last time Atlanta lost by more than I think it was 2 runs, Saturday, May 3rd against the Dodgers. They lost 10-3. Since then, you lost to Cincinnati 4-3. You lost to Pittsburgh 3-2 and 4-3. You lost to Washington 5-4. You lost to Boston 7-6. You lost to Washington 5-3. You lost to San Diego 2-1, and you lost San Diego 5-3. The Braves are playing so many close games right now because the offense hasn't been consistent enough. And what that means is the margin for error is virtually non-existent. And so when you have situations like Dylan Lee gives up a late home run, like pitchers are going to occasionally give up home runs. Like it happens, right? No reliever is going to be perfect over the course of a season. While yes, Dylan Lee has been more homer prone, he's not a Raisel Iglesias level, mind you. And by the way, if you want more details on the issues with the slider for Raisel Iglesias, that was the Monday newsletter over on Braves Today. But the issue here is, as much as we're mad about Dylan Lee giving up the home run later, whatever, or Schwellenbach, or the error from Austin Riley resulted in 2 more runs going on San Diego's ledger, the real issue here has been the offense. There's no other way around it. And Austin Riley's in a slump. It's obviously started to affect his defense. Ozzy's starting to come out of it. He has an 11-game hit streak. He went 2 for 2 with 2 doubles on Sunday. It's the first time he's had multiple extra base hits this year. So he's 11-game hit streak. He's 13 for 37, 4 extra base hits, all doubles. His average has come up from 207 to 239. And it's not completely, but it's come close to erasing that over 28 hitless streak that he was on. But the end of the day here, Atlanta is well out of the playoff picture as of right now. The season's not over. Again, we're 1/3 of the way through. They absolutely have time to fix this. They absolutely have time to get back into the playoff picture. We're not saying the season's done. What I am saying is that this version of the offense is not going to do it. The version of the offense that we've seen in the first third of the season is not good enough to get Atlanta to the postseason. We have to hope that with having Ronald Acuña Jr. back, when Drake Baldwin's, he's playing half the games right now, playing second, batting second, and then you have Marcell Ozuna, then you have Matt Olson. We have to hope that top 4 is going to be good enough, because you can't keep playing all of these 1-run games, because it just magnifies every single mistake that your bullpen makes and that your pitching staff makes. And we all know Atlanta didn't do anything. They tried, but Atlanta ended up not really doing anything to reinforce the rotation or the bullpen over the offseason. And we're not going to relitigate the whole thing about them trying to and whether or not they should have done this or that or whatever. The point is, nothing got done. And in my mind, what they currently have from a rotation and from a bullpen should be good enough to win more games than they've won if the offense was producing like they need to. And ultimately, it's down to the offense. They've got to be better. End of story. There's no other way around it. This offense has to be better if Atlanta wants to make the postseason. Okay? The schedule gets a lot harder right now. They went into the weekend series against San Diego having played the 23rd toughest schedule in baseball. Okay? Starting on Friday night against the Padres, the remaining strength of schedule, 7th hardest in baseball. They didn't get it done against an easy part of the schedule. Now they're into a hard part of the schedule, right? They're playing Philly. They still have the full season set, 13 games against the Mets. They've got 6 against the Cubs, 6 against the Giants, both playoff teams, 3 against the Yankees, who are leading the American League. Actually, technically, Detroit's will lead the American League. Yankees are right behind them, though. I think they're leading the American League in points, or in runs, if I'm right here. Atlanta's offense with Ronald Acuña Jr. has to be not just better than they were before, they have to be significantly better. It's not enough to just be slightly better. You have to be significantly better. One of the things that may make them better, we'll see how it ends up shaking out, is no longer playing Orlando Arcia. He was DFA'd on Friday to make room for Ronald Acuña Jr. We talked about that on the live show on Friday. Speaking of, if you guys like the live show, if you want us to do more live shows on Fridays, leave a comment down below on YouTube or send it to me on social media at Crosby Baseball. Let me know if you like that. Maybe we can do more of those on Fridays going forward. And Snit gave some comments, right? Like Ronald Acuña Jr. said that it's mixed emotions for him. He's happy to be back. He's sad that was the move. And he said if he had known that was the move, he probably would have asked to spend another week in Gwinnett just to not have Orlando lose his job. And Snit said, I told him for his career, if he wants to get everything done and go to AAA and play, we'd love to have him. Orlando Arcia did clear waivers. Atlanta chose to release him versus outrighting him to Gwinnett. So the way this works, logistically, if you're curious, Atlanta is still on the hook for the $2 million, the prorated portion of the $2 million salary. Like the remaining salary he had this year, Atlanta is on the hook for that portion of the salary. They do have to pay that. If another team would have claimed him, they would have taken over that, but then they also would have had the club option for 2026 for $2 million. So had they been able to rehabilitate and fix him in their minor leagues or whatever, they could then turn around, pick up his option, and have him for next year. Nobody wanted to do that. He was released. He's now free to sign with anybody. He may sign with Atlanta on a minor league deal. He may not. But again, the fact that Atlanta could have kept him in the organization and just outrighted him to Gwinnett and instead chose to release him tells me that Atlanta's probably not interested in bringing back Orlando Arcia. Because the money's the same either way. Whether he's in the minors or released, you're still paying the $2 million this year. So the fact that Atlanta just released him tells me they're probably not interested in having him back. So I would imagine we have seen the end of Orlando Arcia in Atlanta for good, simply because, again, they could have kept him and they chose not to. Orlando Arcia was a frustrating player, right? The defense regressed, the offense significantly regressed. But like from all reports, everything that I've read, everything that I've heard, as a person, Orlando Arcia is a good person. We got to wish him nothing but the best. You hate to see a young guy lose a job and then it be so clear that he's not wanted anymore. And it's been like that kind of for him for a while. The Brewers traded for Willy Adames and replaced Orlando Arcia with Willy Adames. Then they dumped him on Atlanta for virtually nothing. Atlanta gave him an extension and kept him, installed him as the starting shortstop, and then traded for his replacement and replaced him a week into the season. It's, from a personal level, it's got to be tough on the guy. And as frustrated as I've been with the swings and misses or making faces at Phillies fans in the playoffs out of the dugout or whatever, it still sucks for the person that he's gone. This has been Braves Today for Monday, May 26th. Y'all enjoy your Memorial Day. We'll be back tomorrow to break down this Phillies series, this very important Phillies series, and what to expect from these three pitchers. Unfortunately, Atlanta does not really get a break here. They've got it's Strider versus Ranger Suarez on Tuesday, AJ Smith-Shawver versus Zach Wheeler on Wednesday, and Chris Sale versus Christopher Sanchez on Thursday. Do us a favor, if you're listening on audio, leave a 5-star review, Apple, Spotify, whatever, YouTube. I guess YouTube Music is what Google uses nowadays. If you're listening on